My brother-in-law spent 8 years convincing my family I was a failure while he manipulated everyone, until his double life blew up and proved I was right all along. For 8 years, I thought I was the problem child, the one who couldn't get along with my sister's perfect husband. My parents took his side, my siblings avoided me, and I became the family outcast. But when Mark finally showed his true colors at my engagement party, everything I'd been saying for nearly a decade was suddenly, devastatingly proven right. I'm 28 years old, and I'm finally writing this because I need to get it out somewhere. People keep telling me I should be happy that the truth came out, that my family finally sees what I've been trying to tell them for 8 years. But honestly, I'm exhausted. I'm angry. And I don't know if I can ever fully forgive the people who were supposed to have my back. Let me start from the beginning. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. My oldest sister Vanessa is 35, my middle sister Claire is 32, and then there's me, Gerald. Growing up, we were pretty close. Vanessa kind of took on a protective role with both of us, especially after our mom got really sick when I was 12. Mom recovered, but Vanessa never really stopped being the third parent in our house. I appreciated it then, but looking back now, I think it created some unhealthy patterns. When I was 20 and finishing up college, Vanessa met Mark. He was 31 at the time, worked in pharmaceutical sales, drove a nice car, and had this way of making everyone feel like he was genuinely interested in them. My parents loved him immediately. He'd come over for dinner and ask my dad about his woodworking projects, bring my mom flowers just because, and he even offered to help me with my resume when I was job hunting. I thought he was great at first too. The first time I felt something was off was about 4 months into their relationship. We were all at a family barbecue, and I made some joke about Vanessa always being bossy, just typical sibling teasing. Mark got really quiet and then pulled me aside later. He put his hand on my shoulder in this friendly way and said something like, "Hey man, I know you're just joking, but Vanessa's really sensitive about stuff like that. Maybe ease up a bit." I remember feeling weirdly guilty, even though Vanessa and I had been joking like that our whole lives. But I apologized and didn't think much more about it. Over the next few months, there were more moments like that. Little comments Mark would make. "Gerald, maybe let your sister talk, she was trying to tell a story." Or, "Your parents are helping you with rent. That's generous." Vanessa and I would never want to be a burden like that, always said in this concerned, helpful tone. Never directly insulting, but somehow I always felt smaller after talking to him. They got engaged after dating for a year. The engagement party was at our parents' house, and I was genuinely happy for Vanessa. I'd started my first real job out of college, and I'd been dating this girl Lucy for a few months. I brought her to the party to meet everyone. About halfway through the night, Lucy and I were talking with Claire about maybe taking a trip together. Just a siblings vacation like we used to talk about doing. Mark came over with drinks and somehow steered the conversation to how busy he and Vanessa were with wedding planning, how expensive everything was, and how they wished they could afford a vacation but they were being responsible and saving money. Lucy later told me it felt like he was calling me irresponsible for even suggesting a trip. I defended him at the time, told her she was reading into it. The wedding was beautiful. I was supposed to give a speech, but the day before the wedding, Mark approached me looking uncomfortable. He said Vanessa was really stressed and that she'd mentioned my speech might be too long, that we needed to keep the reception moving. Could I maybe cut it down to just a quick toast? I was hurt because I'd spent weeks working on that speech, but I didn't want to stress Vanessa out, so I agreed. At the reception, I gave a 30-second toast. Mark's best man spoke for 15 minutes. When I mentioned this to my mom later, she said I was being petty and that Mark's friend had known him longer, so it made sense his speech was longer. That was the beginning of the pattern. Whenever I had a concern about Mark, somehow I was being immature, jealous, or difficult. My dad started making comments about how I needed to grow up and be more supportive of my sister. Claire, who'd always been pretty neutral about everything, started avoiding conversations about Mark altogether. The real problem started after they got married and bought a house. Mark started hosting these big family dinners every month. He'd cook these elaborate meals and make this big show of being the perfect host. My parents ate it up. But I noticed that these dinners always seemed to happen when I had something else going on. I mentioned this once to Vanessa, and she got really defensive, saying that Mark worked hard to coordinate everyone's schedules, and if I couldn't make it, that was on me. When I did make it to dinners, Mark would make these subtle comments about my job, my apartment, my life choices. Always framed as concern or advice, always in front of the family. Gerald's still renting? Man, you should really think about building equity. Vanessa and I could help you understand the home buying process. You're still at that entry-level position? I thought you'd be moving up by now. Let me know if you want me to look at your resume. Another girlfriend? When are you going to settle down and get serious about your future? I started dreading these dinners. Lucy had broken up with me after about a year, and part of what she said when we broke up was that my family made her feel unwelcome. At the time, I thought she was being dramatic. Now I wonder if she saw something I couldn't. When I was 24, I got a really good job opportunity in another city, about 3 hours away. I was excited about it. Better pay, more responsibility, a chance to start fresh. When I told my family at one of Mark's dinners, everyone was quiet. Then Mark said, "Wow, that's a big move. Are you sure you're ready for that kind of responsibility? It seems pretty sudden." My dad agreed with him, said maybe I should think about it more. My mom looked worried and asked if I was running away from something. Vanessa started crying and said she felt like I was abandoning the family. Mark put his arm around her and said they'd been hoping I might move closer to them, that they wanted to be able to help me out more as I figured out my life. Claire just stared at her plate. I felt like the biggest piece of garbage in the world. I turned down the job. Looking back now, I want to scream at my younger self. Things got worse over the next couple of years. I was still in the same job, still renting the same apartment, still single. Mark started really pushing this narrative that I needed help, that I was struggling. He'd offer to loan me money I didn't need, suggest therapists because I seemed depressed, ask if I was having problems at work. All in front of the family, always positioning himself as the concerned brother-in-law trying to help. My parents started treating me like I was fragile. Dad stopped asking me to help with projects around their house, saying he didn't want to burden me. Mom started calling me multiple times a week to check in, which really meant asking if I was okay in this worried voice that made me feel like something must be wrong with me. Claire admitted to me during one phone call that Mark had told her he was worried about me, that he thought I might be dealing with some mental health issues. When I got angry and said that wasn't true, Claire said I was getting defensive and maybe I should talk to someone. I felt like I was going crazy. I started documenting things, keeping a journal of the comments Mark made, the ways he positioned situations to make me look bad. I tried to talk to Vanessa about it once. Just the two of us. I told her that I felt like Mark didn't like me, that he seemed to go out of his way to make me feel small. She got so angry. She said I was jealous of her happiness, that I'd always been jealous of her, and that Mark had been nothing but kind and patient with me despite my attitude. She said if I couldn't be happy for her, maybe we needed some space. I didn't talk to her for 3 months after that. During those 3 months, my parents called me constantly asking what I'd done to upset Vanessa. Claire said I was tearing the family apart. Mark sent me a long email about how he'd always tried to have a relationship with me, how he tried to be a mentor and a friend, but that he couldn't force me to accept help. The email was forwarded to my parents. My dad called me and said he was disappointed in me, that Mark had been trying so hard and I was throwing it back in his face. I apologized. I apologized to Vanessa, to Mark, to my parents. I said I'd been stressed and took it out on them. It wasn't true, but I was so tired of being the problem. I was so tired of being alone. We had an awkward family dinner where Mark gave this gracious speech about how family was important and we all needed to support each other. Everyone cried and hugged. I felt numb. For the next 2 years, I tried to keep my head down. I went to the family dinners. I smiled and nodded when Mark gave me advice. I pretended everything was fine. I started seeing a therapist, not because I thought something was wrong with me, but because I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. My therapist was the first person who used the word gaslighting. She helped me understand that what was happening wasn't normal, that Mark's behavior was manipulative, and that my family's response was enabling him. I started setting boundaries. Small ones at first. I couldn't make it to every family dinner because I had other plans. I didn't share as much about my personal life. When Mark made comments, I'd respond with non-committal phrases and change the subject. This made everyone uncomfortable. My mom said I was being distant. Claire said I was being weird. Mark told Vanessa he was worried I was isolating myself. Then, about 2 years ago, I met Cherry. She was different from anyone I dated before. Confident, direct, with a really good sense for when people were being fake. I didn't introduce her to my family for the first 6 months we were dating because I knew what would happen. But eventually, she wanted to meet them, and I couldn't avoid it anymore. The first family dinner with Cherry was everything I feared. Mark was overly friendly to her but kept making these comments about how I dated a lot of people, how he hoped this one would stick, how important it was for me to finally settle down. Cherry smiled politely, but I could see her picking up on it. In the car on the way home, she asked me why I let him talk to me like that. I tried to explain that it was complicated, that the family didn't see it the way I did. She said it didn't seem complicated to her. It seemed like my brother-in-law was a jerk and my family enabled him. Over the next few months, Cherry witnessed more and more of Mark's behavior. She was there when he joked about me still not owning a home. She heard him tell my parents he was worried about my financial decisions. She watched him dominate every conversation and somehow make every family event about him and Vanessa. And she got angry on my behalf in a way no one ever had before. A year into our relationship, I proposed to Cherry. She said yes, and I was happier than I'd been in years. We decided to have an engagement party, something small at a nice restaurant with both our families and close friends. I knew it wouldn't go well, but Cherry's family was going to be there, and I wanted them to meet mine. The engagement party was 3 months ago, and it's when everything finally fell apart in the best and worst way possible. Everything was going fine at first. Cherry's parents were lovely, my parents seemed to be on their best behavior, and even Mark was being relatively normal. We just finished dinner, and I was about to give a toast thanking everyone for coming when Mark stood up. He clinked his glass and said he wanted to say a few words. What happened next, I still can't fully process. Mark started talking about how he'd known me since I was 20 years old, how he'd watched me grow up, how he'd tried to guide me and help me. Then he said, and I'm not exaggerating, I'll be honest, there were times I didn't think Gerald would ever get to this point. There were times when Vanessa and I worried he'd never find someone willing to put up with him. He laughed like it was a joke. A few people gave uncomfortable laughs. My parents were smiling. Then he turned to Cherry and said, Cherry, you seem like a patient woman, and Gerald's going to need that. He's going to need someone to push him, to help him be better, because left to his own devices, well, we've all seen how that goes. He gestured around like everyone was in on the joke. But seriously, welcome to the family. Just know that we're all here to help Gerald out, so don't hesitate to ask us for advice on managing him. The room went dead silent. Cherry's face went white, then red. Her father looked furious. I felt like I was frozen. Then Cherry stood up, very calmly, and said, Actually, Gerald doesn't need to be managed. He's an intelligent, capable adult who I respect and love. And if this is how your family treats him, then I understand why he's been hesitant for me to get to know you all. My mother gasped. Mark looked shocked. Vanessa immediately jumped up and said, Excuse me? Who do you think you are? Cherry didn't back down. She turned to Vanessa and said, I'm someone who actually sees your brother for who he is instead of treating him like a problem to be fixed. Then she turned to my parents and said something I'll never forget. Your son has been nothing but kind and patient with all of you. He talks about you constantly, always trying to understand your perspective, always making excuses for why you treat him the way you do. But from where I'm sitting, you've let this man, she pointed at Mark, convince you that there's something wrong with Gerald when the only thing wrong is that you believe him. My dad stood up and told Cherry she was out of line. My mom was crying. Claire looked like she wanted to disappear. Mark tried to play it off, saying Cherry was being too sensitive, that he was just joking around. But Cherry's father stood up next and said they were leaving, that his daughter didn't need to tolerate being disrespected, and that he was disappointed in how the evening had turned out. Cherry looked at me and said, Are you coming? I looked at my family, all of them staring at me, waiting for me to apologize, to smooth things over, to be the problem again. And for the first time in 8 years, I said no. Not to Cherry, to them. I stood up and said, I'm done. I'm done pretending Mark is a good guy. I'm done letting you all treat me like I'm the issue. I'm done trying to prove to you that I'm okay when I've been okay this whole time. Cherry's right. About all of it. We left. My phone started blowing up before we even got to the car. Vanessa was calling me every name in the book. My mom was begging me to come back and apologize. My dad sent a text saying I'd embarrassed the family. Mark sent a message saying he was hurt and confused, that he'd only ever tried to help me. Claire didn't say anything. The next few weeks were brutal. My parents called constantly, leaving voicemails about how I'd ruined my own engagement party, how I'd humiliated them in front of Cherry's family, how I needed to apologize to Mark and Vanessa. Vanessa sent me long emails about what a terrible brother I'd always been, how jealous I'd always been of her relationship, how I'd never been able to handle her being happy. She said Mark had been nothing but patient with my issues, and that my behavior at the party proved he'd been right to be concerned about me all along. I didn't respond to any of them. Cherry and I focused on wedding planning and on each other. Her parents were incredibly supportive, which made me feel even worse about my own family. I mourned the relationship I thought I had with my parents and sisters. I mourned the family I thought we were. I went to therapy twice a week. Then, about a month after the engagement party, Claire called me. Actually called, not texted. She asked if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. I almost said no, but something in her voice made me agree. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our apartments. She looked terrible, like she hadn't been sleeping. She told me she'd been doing a lot of thinking since the engagement party. That Cherry's words had stuck with her. That she'd started really watching Mark and Vanessa interact with our parents, with her, with each other. And she was seeing things she'd been ignoring for years. Claire apologized. She cried and apologized for not standing up for me, for taking the easy route, for believing Mark over her own brother. She said she'd been scared of rocking the boat, scared of being on the outside like I was. She said watching what happened to me after I tried to speak up had taught her to keep quiet, and she was ashamed of that. It wasn't enough to make everything okay, but it was something. We talked for 3 hours. I told her everything, all the years of little comments and manipulations, all the times I tried to bring it up and been shot down. She listened and believed me. She said she wanted to repair our relationship, but she understood if I needed time. 2 weeks after that, things exploded in a way I never expected. Vanessa called me at 11 at night, hysterical. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. She kept saying she was sorry, that I was right, that she didn't know what to do. I asked her what happened, and she said Mark had left her. Just like that, after 8 years of marriage, he'd packed a bag and left. Apparently, Mark had been having an affair for over a year. With a woman he worked with, someone younger, someone who thought he was amazing and put together. Vanessa had found text messages on his phone. When she confronted him, he didn't even really deny it. He told her he'd fallen out of love with her, that she'd become too dependent on him, too needy. He said he'd stayed as long as he had because he felt sorry for her, but he couldn't do it anymore. Vanessa was devastated, but there was more. She went through his laptop after he left and found emails, messages, all sorts of things. Including conversations where Mark talked about our family. About how easy it was to manipulate us. How Vanessa was so desperate for approval that she'd believe anything. How her parents were pushovers who just wanted everyone to get along. How I was the only one who saw through him, which was why he'd had to work so hard to discredit me. He'd written to a friend that isolating me from the family had been strategic, that as long as everyone thought I was the problem, no one would listen if I ever called him out on anything else. He described it like a game. He talked about how satisfying it was to watch me squirm at family dinners, knowing he could say whatever he wanted and everyone would take his side. Vanessa sent me screenshots of everything. I read them feeling sick. This man had spent 8 years systematically destroying my relationship with my family as a game, as entertainment. And everyone had let him. My parents found out shortly after. Claire told them what was happening, and they came over to Vanessa's house. Vanessa showed them the emails. My mom called me crying, apologizing over and over. My dad couldn't even speak at first. He was so angry and ashamed. They begged me to come over so we could talk. I went, but I brought Cherry with me. We all sat in my parents' living room. Me, Cherry, my parents, Vanessa, and Claire. Mark wasn't there, obviously. He'd apparently moved in with his girlfriend and had already hired a divorce lawyer. Vanessa looked like a ghost of herself. My parents looked like they'd aged 10 years overnight. Claire was the only one who could look me in the eye. My mom started by apologizing. She said she'd failed me as a mother, that she should have listened to me, that she should have seen what Mark was doing. My dad said he was ashamed of how he'd treated me, that he'd let Mark manipulate him into thinking his own son was the problem. Vanessa apologized through tears, said she understood if I hated her, that she'd chosen Mark over me again and again and she'd never forgive herself. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to yell at them, to tell them how much they'd hurt me, how alone I'd felt for 8 years. But another part of me was just tired. I told them I appreciated the apologies, but that I needed time. That I couldn't just pretend 8 years of being treated like I was broken hadn't happened. That even though Mark was gone, the damage was real. Cherry spoke up and said something that I think helped them understand. She said that when someone tells you over and over that you're the problem, eventually you start to believe it. That I'd spent years questioning my own reality because the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had believed a stranger over me. That rebuilding trust wasn't going to happen overnight, and they needed to respect that. My parents nodded. They agreed to give me space but asked if we could do family therapy together. I said I'd think about it. Vanessa asked if she could hug me, and I let her, but it felt awkward. Claire hugged me too and whispered that she was proud of me for standing my ground. That was 3 months ago. Since then, things have been slowly, painfully improving. Vanessa is going through the divorce and has started therapy. She's admitted that she lost herself in the relationship with Mark, that she let him control how she saw everything, including me. She's apologized multiple times, but I can tell she's struggling with the guilt. My parents and I have been doing family therapy sessions. It's been hard, but helpful. My therapist joined us for a few sessions to help facilitate. We've talked about the parentification, about how Vanessa's role as the caretaker made them defer to her judgment even when they shouldn't have. We've talked about how they taught me that keeping the peace was more important than standing up for myself. We've talked about how they need to rebuild trust with me through actions, not just words. Claire and I are doing better. She's been consistent about showing up for me, checking in, believing me when I talk about how I'm feeling. She's admitted she knew something was off about Mark for a long time but convinced herself it wasn't her problem. She's working on being braver about speaking up, even when it's uncomfortable. Cherry has been incredible through all of this. She's patient when I have bad days where I'm angry at my family. She's understanding when I need space to process. She's also been clear about her boundaries. She'll support my relationship with my family, but she won't tolerate them treating me poorly. My parents have been respectful of that, and I think they actually appreciate having someone who will call them out. The wedding is in 2 months. Vanessa asked if she could still be in the wedding party, and after talking with Cherry, I said yes. But I made it clear that if there's any drama, she's out. She agreed and has been nothing but supportive. Claire is also in the wedding party. My parents are coming, obviously, and things have been mostly okay with them. They're trying, which is more than I had for a long time. As for Mark, I haven't heard from him directly. According to Vanessa, he tried to spin the narrative to their mutual friends, claiming Vanessa was unstable and that he'd had to leave for his own mental health. But Vanessa showed enough people the evidence that most people saw through it. He lost a lot of friends. His girlfriend apparently left him after a few months when she realized he was still legally married and had been lying to her about a lot of things. Last Vanessa heard, he'd moved to another state. Good riddance. I'm not going to lie and say everything is perfect now. I still have moments where I'm incredibly angry at my family for not believing me. There are times when I'm around them and I remember how isolated I felt, how much I doubted myself. Those wounds don't heal quickly. But I'm working on it, and they're working on it, and that's all we can do. The truth coming out validated everything I'd been trying to say for years, but it didn't erase the years of pain. I'm learning that I can forgive my family while still acknowledging that what happened hurt me deeply. I'm learning that rebuilding relationships takes time and consistent effort from everyone involved. I'm learning that I deserve people in my life who believe me and support me, and that it's okay to walk away from people who don't. Cherry's family has kind of adopted me in a way, and having that model of what healthy family dynamics look like has been really helpful. Her parents treat me with respect, they listen when I talk, they don't make me feel like I need to prove my worth. It's shown me what I deserved from my own family all along. I guess if there's anything I want people to take from this, it's that you're not crazy if someone's treatment of you doesn't match up with how everyone else sees them. Manipulative people are good at what they do. That's what makes them manipulative. They know how to play to people's biases and insecurities. They know how to isolate their targets. If you feel like something is wrong, trust yourself, even when everyone else is telling you you're the problem. And to families, please listen when someone tells you they're being mistreated, even if it's by someone you love. Even if it's someone who seems perfect. especially if it's someone who seems perfect. Mark wasn't some obvious villain. He was charming and helpful and made everyone feel good about themselves. That's how he got away with it for so long. Don't let your desire for peace and harmony override your responsibility to protect and believe your family members. I'm going to stop updating after this. I just wanted to close the loop for the people who've been following along. Thank you to everyone who validated my feelings, who told me I wasn't crazy, who encouraged me to stand my ground. It made a difference. I'm moving forward with my life, with Cherry, with the family members who've shown me they can do better. That's all any of us can do.